Physically and mentally, endurance training has changed my life for the better. So let's find out why that is the case. Hello everyone and welcome to another video and some bad news unfortunately, as I am sick as a dog, and not the bulldogs that you see riding skateboards in California, but rather fairly under the weather. So this week's filming plans have kind of gone out the window, if I'm honest, and we are filming this on the Friday before the Sunday the video is meant to come out. So I don't have high hopes. So what we're going to do is we are going to explore how endurance training has changed my life, but we're going to do it through the lens of a question I was asked by Dr. Youssef Smith on the Modern Mind podcast in an episode recently. So there's 3 reasons here why endurance training has changed my life, a few things that you can take away and consider. Whether you agree, whether you don't agree, let me know in the comments down below. And I just want this to be a bit of a demonstration of why endurance training has been so powerful for me, in the form of a podcast clip. So if you are not yet engaged with the podcast, it is called The Modern Mind. Instagram is The Modern Mind UK, and the top link in the description down below is the YouTube channel, as well as it being available on all major podcast platforms. So without any further ado, I'm going to encourage you to engage with all of the things in the description down below, because there isn't much opportunity for product placement throughout this video, but please do enjoy 9 minutes of my conversation with Dr. Youssef Smith.
I've got one more question off the back of that, if it's not going to derail you.
No, crack on, please.
Which, this is a selfish curiosity, that endurance sports particularly need a real tolerance for discomfort, or I'd say even like an enjoyment of discomfort. Very different to the only thing, I guess, where our training overlaps is I've done a bit of powerlifting, I've done some gymnastics. It's fun, it's short bursts, there's no long-term discomfort. Like doing a set of 5, it's hard for about 30 seconds and then it's over. But the idea of like just being plowed for 8 hours on a bike is horrendous. Yet at the same time, that willingness to lean into uncomfortable things, I think, is the keystone habit of success in any domain. And I'd love to know, like, is that something that, do you enjoy it? Have you had to lean into it actively? Where does that come from for you?
So there's almost 3 elements to this that I'll cover point by point. Number 1 is a pride thing, where I sort of reflect on the negative downturn I had in my mental health 2014 to 2016 and the total tailspin I was in, with discomfort being the dark cloud above my head. And now willingly stepping into that arena and having the emotional control to sort of deal with the ebbs and flows of that discomfort better trains me and gives me more confidence that if that dark cloud ever returns, I'm better equipped to manage that through, as Johnny, my business partner, says, sort of, and he always does a fists up stance whenever he says this, is that you meet yourself on these training sessions, or you meet yourself along the way with these races, because we're paying to do this. Ultimately, it's all willing. Nobody's saying, look, mate, you've got to go and sit on a bike for 8 hours. And oh god, just the day job, eh? It's me taking a decision to do these things, and along the way fatigue will set in, self-doubt will creep in, boredom will set in, or the question of, well, what's just go home and watch House of the Dragon, what are you doing? And then you sort of meet a version of yourself where you wrestle with the question as to why you're doing these things, and then that moves you forwards. So the pride element there is almost a meeting the future version of myself, meeting the old version of myself, and saying, I'm going to move towards you rather than back towards you. And that's a pride thing. Secondly is there is a better version of myself on the other side, which is kind of in the same vein, but ultimately the experience of that emotional control, putting yourself in a situation where you have to face pain, suffering, self-doubt, self-criticism, comparing yourself to the next guy, wondering, had I done this differently in my prep, would I be in a better position now? Oh, I can't believe I forgot to do this. How do I fix this? The problem solving that goes along the way if you willingly put yourself into that arena, you're putting yourself in a space where you can grow. And therefore, whether it's success, failure, get halfway, you actually break your leg 2 minutes into the race, whatever it is, there is a better version of yourself on the other side because of everything that's led up until that point and because of the opportunities presented to you psychologically along the way. And every single time, success or failure, I have improved as a person on the other side because I've gone to war with myself. And that's why I'm not competitive with others in any way, which goes back to the YouTube comments thing when I get people being like, oh, why don't you just not lift and go for a sub 10 Ironman? Because I don't care. I enjoy the value this gives to me, and that's all that matters. I'm never in a race thinking, oh, I'm in 17th, I want to be 16th. Literally not a part of my being looks at it in that way at all, which is good because that gives me the freedom to not let ego creep in, which kind of feeds into the first 2 points of helps me remove ego, which helps me remove ego in other walks of life, which sometimes helps me stop looking at things on purely financial metrics, for example. And then the third point is peace, in that most of my long training is done in zone 2, which I know you'll know the benefits of from a sort of physiological point of view as well as a psychological point of view. But the way I view it is you hit this middle ground psychologically where the basic motor pattern that you are repeating is demanding enough for the intensity of your thoughts to be dialed down, which means that you find yourself in this almost purgatory thought section where you can only think about things that you often don't consider because the intensity of the thoughts when you're not having to manage a motor pattern simultaneously, they dominate. Or when you're trying to be hyper reflective and really distill things down, you go into detail that doesn't allow you to view the simplicity of the middle layer. So I find the motor pattern takes enough of your mental capacity and opens you up to this middle ground of thought, which then means that as time progresses, you can have thoughts that develop during the endurance session, training, event, race, whatever it is. And it sounds silly to say, but I think it is the same mechanism as psychedelics, whereby you put yourself in a position that is separate to yourself on a day-to-day basis for you to allow to look at yourself from above and reflect upon the things that you're doing, the direction you're going in, what's important to you, etc., etc. And then, therefore, when you finish that, the amount of times I've got straight through the door and just opened my Apple Notes and thought, right, yep, good, sick, right, nice, put that in there, book that in for then, look at it in this way. And then again, better version of myself, pride that I've got through it, and confidence as well, because to sort of tie that all together is it gives me confidence that if I willingly take on hard things, the majority of the time I'll come out the other side having achieved what I set out to do. And that gives me confidence to take bigger business risks, take loftier thoughts into my head in terms of what direction I want to go in, and it kind of gives me the confidence to take risks, which I think not having dependables, being the age that I am, having the opportunity to go in certain directions is a good trait to have, but it's one that's been developed over time. So that's a long answer, 3-pronged, but that's where the value is for me, and it's something I encourage everybody, whatever they do, to do more zone 2 training, because the majority of people that have tried running and hate running run too fast, and they never appreciated just how slow zone 2 can be for some people depending on your aerobic capacity. The ability to just be at one with your surroundings and have that motor pattern being repeated takes your brain to a place that you don't often get to, and that can be a very I don't want to be like, oh, the iron's my therapy, training's my therapy, because it's not. Therapy is therapy, but it's a state of self-reflection that can give you benefits in your day-to-day life, and one of the ways to get there is through zone 2 training, endurance training. Another way to get there is ice baths. It's a similar mechanism. You're sort of putting yourself into a different state of mind that you can't get into on a day-to-day basis to allow you to reflect on your day-to-day existence.
What an incredible answer. That's going to be my takeaway for today, is the do some zone 2 training, because I think I very much think of cardio as like either coughing my lungs out or nothing. And I wonder whether it's, and your analogy with psychedelics as well, I think makes sense from a neurophysiological perspective too, in that part of the insight that people get from psychedelics is from deactivation of the default mode network. And as you say, it's narrowing the zone of thought, just reducing a bit of the blood flow in the overly critical narrative of self in space, self in time, and allows the unconscious. So it's more of an inhibitory effect rather than a stimulatory effect that produces a lot of the effect of psychedelics, and that matches with what you said. I wonder if it's worth chatting to, I can't remember his name. There's some kind of Buddhist guy who held the world record for a bunch of mad endurance stuff for a while. So it was like longest plank, longest land
Oh,
rowing.
yeah, I know who you mean. It's not a name that springs to mind, as I think it's quite difficult to pronounce, but I know exactly who you mean. The sort of plank where there's a catheter attached to him and everything, and all that level of strange Guinness World Records-ery that goes on. But that goes back to it. Is there's some things that you can There's some things that you can give too much credit on mindset to. There's some things that you don't give enough credit to mindset for, I think, you being us as a species. And I think zone 2 training, endurance training, or the practice of progression within endurance, the endurance sphere, is something that can really refine our mindset over time, and is something that mindset can be very, very powerful for. Whereas mindset isn't going to let you run a 3:30 mile. It's not going to get you to beat Usain Bolt's 100-meter time. But I think sometimes too much credit is given to the power of the mind, and then on the flip side, not enough credit is given to the power of the mind. But I think the lowest hanging fruit for anyone and everyone is exploring endurance opportunities, because you don't know. It's a very black and white way of experiencing discomfort in a way that's on your terms, that's trackable, that's comprehensible within a bigger setting, for you to then actually build that confidence to say, you know what, I am going to make that career change, or I am going to have that difficult conversation with my boss, or I am going to break up with the partner that I've known I haven't wanted to break up with for a year because it's convenient not to do so. And that sounds trite. I don't want to sound like one of those, getting jacked changed my life sort of Facebook ads that you see, but it really can, because it forces you to look at things differently. And it's the reprogramming piece rather than the training in and of itself that I think is very important to understand.
So there we have it, a snippet from my conversation with Dr. Youssef Smith. If you are interested in watching the full episode, then head to the Modern Minds YouTube channel. If you are interested in listening to the full episode, then head to any audio platform that is for podcasts. Please do check out the description down below for a whole load of discount codes and links, as it does me and the channel a solid. And I look forward to picking things up properly as my training really gets going again as of next week. The plan was for it to get going again this week, but I have been very ill from about Tuesday through to today, Friday. This is the first day I don't sound like I've had my throat sandpapered overnight, and I'm not coughing every 15 seconds, but I am still pretty bunged up and sounding quite nasally, if you haven't already picked up on. But nonetheless, that is today's video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope there's some insights for you to take away there. Please drop your comments, thoughts, feelings, and how Zone 2 training has changed your life for the better down below. Or if it hasn't yet, and you weren't inspired to do so, please let us know down below, as that would be brilliant to know that that is the case. Anyway, I'm going to go and have some more Lemsip, and see you next time.